Hi, this is Shannon from No Shelf Control. Thanks for joining me on my channel again today. I am very excited to talk to you today about two books. One that struck me as a 4-star read and the other that is a 5-star read in my opinion. So I'm very excited to talk about them today and can't wait to get going here. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe down below. I would really appreciate it. It helps me to get more viewers and have more people to talk to about books. So I really appreciate that. If you watch this video and think, hey, these two books were not on the list in the video that you created for January of books you were going to read in January, what happened? I will explain that. As I mentioned in my video, I'm not good at keeping to a strict schedule. So I'm about 50-50 at this point. Two of the books that I've read and talked to you about were on the list and these two are not. So as I describe them and talk a little bit about my opinion, I will explain how they got on the list even though they weren't there before. So the first book I want to talk about is Chaos Theory by Nick Stone. That name may be familiar to you. Nick Stone also wrote Dear Martin, which is a book that I have been meaning to check out, haven't gotten around to, and one of the reasons why I thought Chaos Theory would be a good pick. The reason that Chaos Theory ended up on the list this month, when it hadn't been earlier when I talked about my TBR, is that I tend to request a lot of books from NetGalley, and I feel guilty when I don't read them or review them. So I wanted to make sure I went back to my NetGalley list and found something that had been gifted to me to read and put it on the list. And so that's where Chaos Theory came from. I do have a bias toward YA books, so when I saw Chaos Theory pop up as one of the books that had been provided to me by NetGalley and knew that it was by Nick Stone, who had written something that I wanted to check out, I decided it was one that I should take a chance on. And I'm really glad that I did. Chaos Theory is about two young people. The first one is Shelby. She's a young woman. And the second one is Andy, but she calls him Walter. That's his real first name, and that's what she calls him. So you may hear me go back and forth between Andy and Walter. There are a fair number of triggers in this book, so I thought I would mention those first. If you have concerns about mental health diagnoses, about self-harm, about alcoholism, infidelity, divorce, those are all things that come up in this book that you might want to consider before you decide to pick it up. I didn't find any of them super triggering, but these are not necessarily hot spots for me. So think about that and make sure that you take care of yourself when you decide whether or not to read this book. So Shelby and Andy. Shelby has mental health issues. Shelby has discovered that she is bipolar and has had some serious issues with bipolar and self-harm in the past. And she has basically started a new school and shut herself off from everyone around her because of how things went in her last school with her mental health diagnosis. So the one problem that I had with this book, and if you can get past it, I swear you will love this book, but I had a really tough time. So at the beginning of the book, there is a scene where you are going to have to sort of let go of your disbelief for a minute and play along with the author, if you can, because she sets the situation up for Shelby to meet Andy by having Andy text a random number, and it happens to connect him to this girl in his school who happens to be Shelby. So I don't know, I had a really hard time with that. He's drunk, he texts a random number, and it just so happens to be a girl in his school that he doesn't happen to know, and who later that evening drives by the scene where he has wrecked his car and is getting a DUI. I don't know, suspension of disbelief was too far for me there, but I kept reading, and I was really glad I did. Good book, starts with that scene. I wish Nick Stone had been able to find a different way to make them meet, but you know, not my choice, and I went with it. So if you can go with it, I think the payoff is high. A lot of talk in this book about mental health and alcoholism. Shelby has mental health issues. You will quickly see that Andy has problems with drinking. They both have really interesting families, and that was part of the book that I really loved. Shelby's family is incredibly supportive. She has a grandmother that you will fall in love with, Bibi. Her family is mostly Black, but there's some Indian in her family. Her grandmother is Indian, but she considers herself dark-skinned Black. Andy is a lighter-skinned Black person. His mom is Black and his dad is white. So there's a lot of racial melting pot going on in this book that I really loved, and a lot of conversation about how her life and his life are a little different because of the different shades of brown that they may happen to, be made up of. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? A lot of inclusion. Shelby, I think I picked up on a couple of instances where it's implied that Shelby might be bisexual. I think that she had a relationship with a woman before she met Andy. Her cousin, Becky, who is a riot, also happens to be a lesbian. So there's a lot of different inclusion for sexuality in the book, which I really appreciate. I like to see a melting pot of people. I like to see different kinds of lifestyles and all different, kinds of people that I can relate to and learn about. So that makes me happy. There are some issues of privilege in this book. So Shelby is able to get away from her mental health struggles, partly because her parents are really, really wealthy. Her mom is a writer. She writes urban fiction, which is funny. I had just asked a friend the other day, a friend had put on my Facebook site, I read urban fiction. And I said, what is urban fiction? I've never heard of that. Well, Shelby's mom is an urban fiction writer. And she makes good money. Her dad is some kind of doctor, also makes good money. And so they were able to help her with her mental health challenges in ways that people who didn't have that kind of money probably would not be able to. So there's a part of that I looked at and thought, I wonder how this would be a different story if Shelby's family was average. But I absolutely went with it. And there's a lot to be said for how her family deals with the mental health challenges that she is presenting. She struggles more than once in this book, and they don't grab her and hide her away from the world. They're not so afraid of her mental health issues that they can't let her live her life. And I really was excited about that. Having had some history of mental health issues in my life, and being a mom, I know that it must be challenging when you see your child struggling or see your child hurting him or herself to not want to just smother them, and keep them safe from the world. But in this book, Shelby's parents are aware that they can't do that. And they give her a lot of independence, but help her put up some guardrails to keep her well and keep her functioning as she should be. So I admired that. I really appreciated how Nick Stone presents Shelby's mental health issues, presents how Shelby deals with her mental health issues. You'll have to read it and find out, what she does to keep herself safe. But the description of bipolar and what Shelby goes through is really good. And I really learned a lot and appreciated that conversation. As for Andy and his alcoholism, he does ultimately end up visiting some AA and Al-Anon meetings. I had a little struggle with the idea that, it was presented in this book that if you have an alcohol problem, you can go to Al-Anon instead of AA. I'm not sure that that's really common. Al-Anon is generally for the families of people who struggle with alcoholism, and AA is for alcoholics. And so I would have liked to have seen Andy given direction that he needed to be in AA, not using Al-Anon as a way to understand how his behavior was impacting his family. I would have liked to see him in the program where he could focus on his own challenges and what he was doing. But that's neither here nor there. Perhaps some people do use Al-Anon for that reason, but it troubled me just a little bit. I was glad to see that Nick Stone has Andy get some help in this story. We watch him spiral throughout the book, and there were many times when I thought, this kid's got a drinking problem. Are we gonna talk about that? And ultimately we did get there. The truth of the matter is this is a love story. This is the story of how Shelby and Andy meet, how their specific issues keep them apart, and ultimately what happens at the end of the book because of those specific issues. So it may not end quite the way you like or you hope, but it's a great story. There's a lot there that feels real to me. And I also felt like if I had a child or knew a young person who was struggling with mental health issues, this would be a YA book that I would want to share with them. So I really enjoyed this one. I absolutely gave it 4 stars. And I would recommend that if you read YA and if you're into a story about, you know, sort of star-crossed lovers with their own baggage, that you check this one out. I do want to give you a little bit of the information about this book. So it's 288 pages, so not a terribly long book. It is Crown Books for Young Readers is the publisher, and it's coming out at the end of February. So this book is not out quite yet. This I got as an e-arc from NetGalley, but it's coming up and you can pre-order it. My understanding is that pre-orders help authors tremendously. So if you have an interest in this book, please pre-order it and get it into your home so you can be ready for it at the end of February. The second book that I want to talk about, I am so excited about. It is called Someday Maybe by Onyi Nwabineli. Onyi Nwabineli is what I'm going to say here. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, and I don't have anybody to fact check me, so I can't call her up and ask her how she pronounces her name. But this is a fantastic book. It's called Someday Maybe. It is about 350 pages. It was one of the book of the month choices in November. So I got it then. It has not been out very long. It's a November, published book, 344 pages. And the publisher is Graydon House, published November 1st of 2022. I love the cover. The colors just blew me away. So I love the picture of this proud, strong woman. And I love the colors. I also have a bit of a secret crush on the Nigerian culture. So this woman in the book, as well as, I suspect, Onyi Nwabineli, she's Nigerian. And I have had a number of colleagues who are Nigerian. And I just love the culture. I love the way the Igbo language sounds. I love the way English sounds when it comes from someone with a Nigerian accent. I love the fact that the people are very proud and passionate. Now, I realize that's a small sampling, the Nigerian people that I know, but you know, my experience has been that it is a group of proud and passionate people who are very closely tied to their families and very proud of where they come from and who they are. So I have a little secret crush on the Nigerian culture. So that was part of why I picked up this book. The other reason I picked up this book is a little bit embarrassing, but as I've told you before, I read most things on my phone. And my phone battery had died, and I needed to spend some time in the bathroom. So I cannot stand being in there without something to do. So I grabbed a book off of my shelf after, you know, looking briefly at what was available, was drawn in by the colors and the picture and the artwork on the front of the book, and started this book. I then, of course, got it on ebook as well and went back and forth between reading it in hardcover and reading it on the ebook. But such a delight, this book. It is a total emotional gut punch. This book is about a woman named Eve whose husband has committed suicide on New Year's Eve, and she is the one who finds him. That is not a spoiler. That is within the first couple of pages and probably even on the back of the book. But the way that this author, Nwabineli, I'm having a hard time with the pronunciation, the way that Nwabineli presents this grief that Eve feels in finding her husband Quentin and having to go on with her life is so vivid and so believable that I almost cannot imagine that she hasn't experienced this herself. I was amazed by how clear and powerful the writing was. You could just feel the pain that Eve is feeling. Her relationship with her family, she has an amazing big family and a number of friends who support her. while she goes through this, and she is not always kind to them. Where she is emotionally is not anywhere that is taking into account other people's feelings. And that feels real to me too. I mean, she is just in a place where she is feeling pain all the time. And it is portrayed in this book in a way that shows you, doesn't tell you. I mean, you watch her feel this and go through anger and denial and sorrow. I mean, we're not talking about sadness. We're talking about sorrow. And you watch her to see if she's going to come out the other side. And I'll tell you, the title of the book, Someday Maybe, her brother Nate asks her at one point a question something like, are you ever going to be okay? And the only answer she can come up with is someday maybe. And that just tells you the depth of the pain that this character is feeling. Having had a couple of people in my life who died from suicide, never anyone as close as this character is experiencing. I couldn't get over how real this book felt to me. There are a couple of characters. Eve was a great character. I mean, she's in so much pain, but it's totally possible to love her. Her family is fantastic. She has a sister who does for her. She doesn't know how to show that she loves her, so she does things. She takes care of details. She handles the logistics. She has a younger brother who's never been the one who has to, take care of his big sister. And we watch how he navigates this. Her parents are traditional Nigerian, and so they pray and they try to figure out, what kinds of modern help she might benefit from, and whether or not they're comfortable with that, or whether they think that, this kind of tragedy should be put strictly on God's plate, and left there, if counseling or other things like that are even relevant. There are a few characters here, though, that I just fell in love with. Louisa is one, so look out for her. She becomes a dear friend. And her personality is just so charming and so prickly. And I adored her. I loved all the characters. The other one is Henrietta, who you'll have to look for in the Isle of Man. Keep an eye out for the name Henrietta. That kind of love, the love where you don't know what to say, so you just do little things to try and help the person. That's what I understand. That's how I know how to help people. And I watched these two do that and thought, oh yeah, there are those of us out there. We just don't know what to say, and so we do. It just was very touching to me. There's a nice twist in the middle of the book. I'm not going to tell you what that is. I did not see it coming, and I love that about a book too. I hate it when I expect the twist. So I was excited that something happened that I was not anticipating. And the end of the book is good. There's good closure there. I will tell you, the villain of the book is Eve's husband Quentin's mother. Her name is Aspen, and she is the epitome of privilege. She is stinking rich and woefully mean. She's just not a kind person. And while I think that Noah Bonelli tries to give us some insight into why Aspen is that way, she's in my opinion, simply unforgivable. I'm not sure if she was meant to be written that way or if I just couldn't get past it, but I didn't see anything redeemable about her character. There's a little bit of give at the end, but it was not enough to bring me back around and make me any kind of Aspen fan. So I loved this book. If you get the opportunity, please check it out. It is very new. In November. The other thing I meant to tell you, it's a debut. So not only is this an amazing book, it's Noah Bonelli's first book. So I didn't read anything about her. So I don't know if she has experienced this in her life. I don't know if she's 23 or 73. Sometimes I just don't want to know about the author's experience. I want to read the book and soak it up for what it is. There's no author's note, at the back or any kind of, at least not in my version, any kind of book club questions. So I got to read it for what it was and take it in, in the way that If you get a chance to check this book out, I highly recommend it. The first one was Chaos Theory. I gave that 4 stars. It's YA. And the second one is Someday Maybe by Onyi Nwabineli. And I gave that all 5 of my 5 stars. I really love that book. So thank you so much for joining me today. I love having the opportunity to talk to you. I did want to point out, I got some new shirts. It says, that's what I do. I read books and I know things. So these came from Etsy. I have a few other literary t-shirts that I acquired, and I will put a link to the Etsy shop down below in case you're interested in grabbing some for yourself. They are super soft, really good quality, and they came very quickly. So I can't say enough about that. All right. Well, I can't wait to see you next time I record a video, and we will talk soon.